was interesting seeing what happened with this many people all getting together. But I think the people who promoted this didn't think too clearly of what might happen if they had the entertainment they're having.
What do you think of the people around here in your own description?
They seem like good people. I like them.
A lot of good people got together from Friday, August 15th to Monday, August 18th. And although they were good people, most of them rather strangely anti-establishment, the general consensus of opinion was that there were just too many of them. This is Bob Noble. For the next 20 minutes, a brief look back at Woodstock 1969, the mod music and arts fair which brought nearly 500,000 young people to a small dairy farm in Sullivan County, and a king-size traffic snarl most of the residents of the tiny community of Bethel will never forget. Why did they come? A young man on the grounds during the event said,
Well, I thought it would be some kind of a large good time for everyone, a lot of people getting together.
But it became apparent that the crowds were going to be far greater than the show's producers, Woodstock Ventures Incorporated, had anticipated. Hasty messages were sent out to those still on the clogged highways en route to the show. Some, sitting in stalled cars, got the message without having to be told.
You come from?
Albany,
And what time did you leave?
9:30. Took us 6.5 hours to get here.
This far, that is.
That's right, halfway.
Do you anticipate going on to get to the concert grounds itself?
No, I don't think it's worth it. There are too many people turning back already. And you can't get too close to the bandstand area to hear the concerts anyway.
Why did you come to this Aquarian Festival?
Well, I thought it was going to be a groovy thing, but I think they oversold tickets and over-advertised the whole thing, and there are way too many people here already.
Some area residents of the small Catskill community of Bethel were warned ahead of time to stock up on supplies, but even they weren't quite prepared for the crowds that eventually did show up. Bob Hall spoke with one woman.
Can I have your name, please?
Marie Ogno,
And you live in?
Mungup Valley.
Mrs. Ogno, have you ever seen in this area such a display of young people, such a traffic jam, and why have you lived here?
No, I never have.
Could you describe in your words what it's been like the past couple of days here?
It's been like a nightmare.
When did the traffic start coming in?
Early Thursday morning.
Is it hard to get out to the store? Are there any problems with electricity, water?
Well, no problem with electricity and water, but it is a problem getting out of our street.
Do you have enough supplies to keep you for what may be the weekend?
Well, I made sure I went shopping before this all happened, so I'd have enough in.
Some of those who came from far and near to see the show got as close as, say, 6 miles. But all of them were discouraged.
Can I have your name and where you live, please?
Stephen Schwartz, Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Steve, I take it you drove all the way down from Cambridge just to see the exposition here?
Yes, I did. We came from New Hampshire, as a matter of fact.
Did you buy tickets to see the concert?
Yes, we have 2-day tickets.
Have you gotten up close to the concert area?
No, this is the closest we've gotten.
Are you planning on going up all the way?
We're going to see what happens along the way and decide from there. It doesn't look too good now.
During the 3-day show, the hundreds of thousands of contemporary music fans who were lucky enough to get close to the show raved about the performances of such artists as Joan Baez, Janis Joplin, the Jefferson Airplane, Sly and the Family Stone, and the Creedence Clearwater Revival. And when the whole fair was over, the mob left rather quietly, and the small downstate town tried to return to normal. Bob Hall spoke with some of the residents of Bethel. One man offered these comments.
Could I have your name, please, sir?
Ford Brown.
And Mr. Brown, what was it like for you, the 3 days of the Aquarian Exposition here in Bethel, New York?
Well, I should say it was the most exciting time of our lives. And that was mixed with fear, apprehension, and still a desire to help people out. But we were forced to lock ourselves in and out of the house. And while no one actually did us any harm or tried to break in, still in all, we couldn't help but be alarmed at that number of people in that close proximity.
Well, right here, we're just off Route 17B in the town of Bethel. And you say the site was how far from here?
approximately a mile and a half.
And what were they using this area here for?
This was a parking lot rented by Woodstock or Aquarium, as well as the roadsides parked full of people.
And you own the land that was used for the parking lot?
No, I do not own that.
Did the exposition itself rent land from you, Mr. Brown?
Only in as I acted as agent for city people who owned land here.
I see. How did you go about that?
Well, it was all done by telephone late Friday afternoon when it became apparent that Woodstock needed extra parking land, needed it desperately.
Who owned the property that the exposition was held on?
Mount Tom Day School, New Rochelle, New York.
And I take it he's an absentee landlord of the...
Yes, you could say that.
Is it a farm up there?
It was a farm up until last year. They've only owned it a year.
Could you describe the temper of the young people that were here that weekend overall?
I would say that the young people suffered the utmost privations with the greatest patience imaginable. They seemed polite at all times, asked nicely for things, thanked people. I don't think they heard, and many of them told me how well the town people used them, how welcome they made them. Still in all, I don't think those young people can imagine the trouble and confusion that they made for the townspeople. Our lives were, well, completely altered overnight. We couldn't go anywhere. We couldn't do our normal jobs. We couldn't get to work. We couldn't get home. My daughter works for the New York Telephone Company in Monticello. She had to travel 40 miles with what would ordinarily be a 10-mile trip. I don't work in the summer myself, so I was able to stay home and watch my property and make myself useful. But many people lost several days' wages because they simply could not get to work. Not much to be made out of the exposition.
Did you have any trouble at all with the young people that came here? Any instances?
No, I didn't. And I really don't know. I presume you mean trouble, altercations, or arguments. I don't know of much of anyone who did, because everyone was very careful. We didn't want to provoke a riot. With 400,000 to 500,000 people, whatever it may be, I don't think anyone really knows. Any little spark could have touched off something.
Did you see any evidence of these people using drugs or being under the influence of drugs while they were here?
Yes, I did. Jugs were offered to me. I operated towing service, pulling people out of the mud in the parking lot out here, and drugs were offered repeatedly to me, as well as beer, which, of course, is more or less acceptable. And two were camping right here adjacent to my house. Three. And we gave them a little supper Monday night. They were still here. And at that time, they offered me grass or acid, either one.
What's your feelings about that type of thing?
Well, naturally, drugs are out, as far as I'm concerned, out. I might also add that my daughter's husband, one of their husbands, a nephew, walked from here to the exposition on Sunday afternoon, and they stated that drugs were being sold openly and offered for sale openly.
How would you describe your experience overall, then, through the whole weekend?
Well, I won't say that I didn't enjoy certain parts of it. I enjoyed talking to the young people and seeing how they live and see how they behave. But it's an experience that once is enough.
A number of other Bethel residents were a good deal less agreeable in their feelings toward the thousands of modly dressed and mostly long-haired youths. One woman wrote a written statement which she had prepared.
I am wondering why no one in Bethel Village has been interviewed for the newspapers and TV. We lived with these people for 5 days and nights. The health hazard and filth is beyond description. Homes were broken into and destroyed, also a Presbyterian church. Drug-crazed, naked men tried to get in people's homes. Many of the people never arrived at the festival, as they were too drunk or overcome by drugs and fatigue to go further. They ended up on people's lawns and in ditches. Drugs were sold on 17B and Whitmore Road like a peanut vendor. We were unable to reach the narcotics squad. I can't see any happiness in watching thousands of people in such misery. Someone spoke of them being our future Americans. At the rate they are going, in less than 10 years, they will all be dead or in mental institutions.
I heard there was a rumor that the state police were given orders not to pick up anyone after Friday. Do you think there's anything to that?
Yes, I do. They were told, I believe, not to touch anyone using them, only those selling.
I heard that the church was broken into. What happened there?
They used it, the bathroom facilities and the kitchen, and left it in a very filthy condition.
Was anything stolen?
This I don't know.
Could you describe the condition of the average person that came to the exposition?
They were filthy by the time they reached here, and they looked bedraggled. And I think that they wouldn't riot. They were too tired.
What about the disposition of the crowd that came?
Well, they were looking for favors, and they were very polite, as you or I would be in a strange place. We washed bleeding feet and wrapped them up and everything we could to help them. But at the same time, I'm hurt. I was sick just looking at them. I put 20 years with the city with delinquents and narcotics. And I saw more here in these few days than I saw in 20 years in New York.
Well, there were some light points of observation on the crowd as the Bethel townsfolk experienced some totally unique new sights and sounds.
It would be a car with 25 people, just riding the hood, the sides, the top, and everything. They were riding everywhere inside the cars. You know, as the car would go along, they'd jump on.
I spoke to a group of boys sitting on the store stoop and asked them how they were enjoying themselves, and they said, "Oh, man, fine." They said, "Where else could you go where there's no law and order and do anything you want to and nobody stops you?"
They came from all over the country. Many who had only one thing in common, their appreciation for the sounds of today. Bob Hall spoke with one who remained, a guy named Tim.
I vote in California. I'm from New York at this point, and I haven't really found a place that you can really call home.
What's you still looking?
I think that it's become a country this weekend. Again, although there are a lot of people who are questioning it, because it seemed a shame that 500,000 people had to go so far to come sit in a cattle farm just to be able to hear a little music and have 3 days of peace and music. When it seems that out of 500,000 people, I believe I've heard that there was one death. There was an accident where a boy got hit by a truck. There was a second death where 5,000 people, one of the local residents ran into another local residence and killed them. So that seems that it's one death for 500,000 people of a city of hippies, and one death, both accidents, by a city of, or a town of 5,000. And I really would like to have all the people in the world to compare their cities over 100,000 and just see what rape, damage, pillage, robbery, accidents, etc. happened in their statistics, and compare them with the so-called ugly, dirty hippies who seem to work very well with the police. You could interview the local sheriffs, you could interview the local merchants. A few people did very well. They tripled their prices and doubled their prices and charged for glasses of water, and some of them were hippies and some of them were not.
Can you describe what this whole scene meant to you over this weekend?
I wrote a thing. Let me look at it for a second and see if it's readable. To whom it may concern, the Aquarian Festival has begun. Last weekend, some 500,000 people descended upon the farm of Max Yazka, a dairy farmer, to get together for 3 days of peace and music. It was great. There are a lot of rules, bent or broken. things and stuff changed hands in many ways. The double standard finally evidenced itself in our favor. I believe it's now up to us to maintain. I think Defense Secretary Laird announced recently that 100,000 troops were released or going to be released from active duty. I believe that's possibly because there was so much, let's call it peace and love up here, that was felt around the world. I don't believe in the 193-year history of our country or any other there's ever been such a great exposition in favor of the example of youth showing itself and the rest of the world that they have learned the lessons they were taught, and it's now time for the teachers to sit back and look around and see whether they're following their own teachings, because if they're not, it's entirely possible that next year they won't be in the position that they are now, and they really ought to realize that we are all members of one establishment which either stands or falls, related back to Lincoln, many others, related to Shakespeare's words. It all seems to be leading towards one thing. We either exist and are tolerated, or we don't. And you know who we are. We is equated with all of us. Some of us are in Africa. Some of us are in Asia. Some of us are in America. But we're all somewhere. Wherever we are, if we look around, we're here now. And I believe that next week is then, and last week is then, and now is the only time that anything can ever be done. And it's very difficult to undo.
An observer said of the Aquarian Exposition that it was much more than a good deal of music played before the masses. It was an entire philosophy in itself, a musical gathering for expression of ideas of thousands of people from widely diverse areas and backgrounds who had similar thoughts on a number of subjects. One of the participants, a hippie named Jay, lives in a commune. He told us some of the background in setting up the festival.
We were involved, like, with the Woodstock Festival through the Hog Farm and Merry Pranksters, King Kesey's people, who we travel with this summer. And we came from Oregon in a caravan with the Pranksters in hope of seeing that Woodstock became the biggest reality to youth. This is the first youth festival of this massive size that this country ever saw. And the things that could occur and come out of this festival could only be positive if everybody worked on it and created the right energy and opened their minds to what was going on. And we took up on the idea and came here and worked on the site, arrived a little bit early, and worked with the people who were here and helped set up the main stage and helped set up the stage, the free stage also, down by the campsite, which is about 500 yards from the main stage. And we more or less, we were here, I think we were hired, they told us, as peace police, security people. And it was our job to more or less calm things down when things got rough. Happily, nothing ever got rough. Everything was very gentle here. They used to theme music, 3 days of music and peace and music and love. It was just that. No bad vibes. The vibrations were just perfect. Some people came here to more or less take dope. Some people came here to listen to hard rock. Some people came here to show their culture off. Some people came here out of curiosity. Some people came here just to look at other people and get into what they were into. People came here for many various reasons. But I think that everybody, on the whole, left Woodstock with an aroma of such sanity, something that this country, I think, dearly needed. for a very long time.
What do you think you personally accomplished here?
I believe that, we showed the country that, for one thing, the youth especially, as well as a lot of adults who had been working on a cultural level, had something to show for, like, society itself, to show that they blended in, like, within society and out of society, with something very creditable. Music, lights, just existence. We had first aid, we had free food, we had everything society had. I mean, we had to use the basic structure for survival of society, but work on it in their methods and our methods, from electric to water to clothing to shelter to food to what have you. And I think we survived.
Yes, the hippies, nearly 500,000 of them, survived. The tiny Catskill town of Bethel survived. And millions of Americans had a better look than they'd ever had before at a reported gap between the now generation and the establishment. Both can now look back to a 3-day weekend in the middle of August and wonder at that big section of gap which was removed by a music festival, Woodstock 1969. This is Bob Noble.